Well, so far it sounds like a convincing case as he wraps up his case, essentially. The prosecutor, Michael, you know, what do you make about this argument that, look, the autism had nothing to do with this?
It's a bit of a red herring. You know, it is interesting, gives the defense something to play with, but really it has nothing to do with the ultimate decision this jury has to make. The guy does a good job. I think the prosecutor does a good job. I would do one more thing, maybe. Try to define deliberation by describing what it is not. You know, it is not a heat of passion scenario. He's mentioned passion, but we think of the snapped scenario. Right. I think that gives everybody in the jury members' chairs some solid ground to work from. They go, well, no, this is not a snap. This is not a guy walking in on his wife with another man. This is something that required reflection, and there were many times along the way before the killing where this defendant reflected on what he had to do.
Yeah. Well, I know, you know, we had heard a snippet from Gypsy. Unfortunately, because of other breaking news, we didn't get to listen to that much more of her testimony. But what did you make of her testimony and her demeanor on the stand?
Well, something, right? I mean, she's clearly a victim of stunted development, you know, emotionally, physically to some degree. She sounds like she's 12. Remember this in the context of the defense theory that she manipulated the defendant. Would you be manipulated by the sound and mannerisms of that little girl at 27, 29, however she... I mean, she still seems like a little kid. I think you have two people here that neither seem to be very manipulative.
Right.
You've got the low-key autistic gentleman. You've got the woman who's been artificially stunted in her development. Maybe together, you know, they actually had enough moxie to come up with this crazy plan.
When you put it that way, it's true. It's almost remarkable that they did come up with this plan and follow through on it. And, you know, obviously they didn't get too far before the law caught up with them. Let's go ahead and listen to the rest of the prosecutor's closing argument.
Text message.
So, you know, the prosecutor laying it out, this was deliberate. I mean, even in the way he stabbed her, he didn't just stab her willy-nilly. He purposely cut her in the neck so that she would bleed out. You know, the premeditation obviously is a big factor here. Do you think that prosecutors have effectively proved it?
I think there's no doubt about it. Remember, there was also second degree and involuntary manslaughter on the list there, but second degree was the only hope that the defense had. There was no way involuntary manslaughter would be found.
I mean, he did it. He admits it.
So I don't even know why that was on there for the jury to consider. But no, they obviously saw all of these signposts along the way and said, yeah, he's been deliberating all day, all week before he killed this woman.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear a little bit of the defense's closing arguments, and then the verdict is up. Stick around. Gypsy Blanchard had had enough. She was the victim of terrible abuse. She was chained to the bed at one point. Now, all of this tragic, but Michael, I mean, what part does that really play in the jury's decision about Nicholas Godejohn?
You know, the problem is that Nicholas doesn't have any of the sympathies that we might find from the victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. You know, everybody feels sorry for her because of what she went through, but you can't feel sorry for him because of what happened to her.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I would think might nullify the jury, if nothing else.
Right.
They just don't have that to cling to here. They're seeing a guy that seems to be at least in control of his faculties to the point that he can kill somebody, think about it, carry it out.
Right, come up with ideas like mailing the knife back to himself in Wisconsin.
Bad idea, by the way. Bad idea.
Right.
But
I mean, clearly, you know, he admits to the murder, but they clearly did not do a good job covering their tracks, and it's not really clear how far out they sort of had thought, you know, thinking that they could get away with this. I mean, first of all, it does seem like, oh, they moved to Wisconsin and here they are planning their new life. They actually thought they could get away with this. I mean, that alone makes you sort of question.
Yes, I mean, there's no accusation they're brilliant, right? I mean, you know, his IQ is 77, I think. We don't know what the young lady's was, but, you know, this is not the Algonquin Round Table here. So they were doing the best they could with what they had to work with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, you say, okay, there's not as much sympathy for him. I mean, I would argue, well, I mean, this guy did kind of get caught up in this crazy case between mother and daughter and dragged into it. I mean, you know, whether he says he killed her, he planned for it, you know, whether, you know, he really knew what he was doing or not. I mean, based on what he said, it seems like he understood.
He had so many opportunities to say, wait a minute, this is crazy, what the heck am I doing, and walk away, and he never did.
Well, you know, as you've been seeing on your screen all day, we know that this verdict came in last week, and the jury did find Godejohn guilty, but let's go ahead and see the moment where they announced that verdict. Well, there you have it. Nicholas Godejohn now facing life in prison without the possibility of parole, with the possibility of no parole. He is going to be back in court for sentencing in February. So, Michael, you know, it seems like you're probably not surprised by this. The defense had an uphill battle from the start, really.
No doubt. They were shooting for second degree. They couldn't get it. I thought we almost had a Jessica Chambers moment there when one of the jurors said no when he should have said yes. You got a 50-50 chance here. Come on.
Right, exactly.
It was yes. And so the jury pulled out as expected. It was unanimous.
Yeah, you know, as we said before, Gypsy is been serving her 10-year sentence. She took a plea a couple of years back to second-degree murder. It's interesting because according to a number of reports, she's actually thriving in prison, and she's working on completing her GED, dealing with the trauma.
She's been through prison already.
Right, it's a different kind of prison. You know, for this guy, this is the rest of his life now. And
if I'm the prosecutor, it played out exactly as I would have hoped. Okay, you've got the sympathies weighing on Gypsy that may have made it tougher to convict her. So we get her on second-degree murder, and even though she effectively, you know, tried to help her boyfriend by her own testimony, the jury didn't buy it. And so the prosecutor, I think, had a win-win in both these cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tragic case, I guess, whichever way you cut it. And of course, we're going to continue to stay on it. We will see what happens with the sentencing next year in February. So, Michael, thank you as always for being with us here. Some news here on this busy Thursday afternoon. Stay with us because coming up, Aaron Keller will be here with the Daily Debrief. He will be talking more about the new charges against the president of Michigan State University. That story just breaking a little while ago. He will have much more on that. Michael will be sticking around with him to talk about that and much more. Thanks so much for sticking with me this afternoon. I'll see you next time here on the Law and Crime Network. Stay with us. Aaron will be up right after this break.